All right, taking tape measurements. This one's one of my favorite ways to measure progress. The problem with the scale is you don't see the difference between muscle mass and fat mass. However, fat takes up a lot more space than muscle, so if we're losing fat, and even if we're building muscle, you should still see a difference in your tape measurements. First measurement I want you to do is the waist. If we're gonna do the waist, I want you to make sure that you're directly across the belly button, and we're wrapping all the way around. And obviously you would do it shirtless, right? So make sure that it is directly on the skin so that we're not getting the, we're not actually getting the shirt in there. So I'm gonna do inches. I'm gonna go directly across the belly button. Try to make sure it's as even as possible across the waist and you're not bunched up here or there's no slack in the tape measurements. So I'm going to go directly across my belly button, measure what it says and write it down. This one you can upload in the Trainerize app. Next is gonna be your bicep. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna find the thickest part of your upper arm. There's two options here. You can either find your acromion process, which is gonna be that shoulder bone sticking out here, or you can find if you have a mole or a beauty mark or a scar. I always recommend using one of those because they're easier to find. So I have a mole right here on my shoulder. I'm gonna use that every single time I measure. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find the thickest part of my bicep. I'm gonna measure up from that spot to my mole. It's about 3 inches, and I'm gonna always go measure 3 inches down from my mole and measure the width of that same spot on my arm. So make sure your arm is relaxed when you do this. You're gonna measure that and then write down the measurements. Why we want to measure the same spot every time is because as you see progress, fat will move around. So your thickest part may not always be in that spot, but that doesn't mean that you're not making progress. So we want to always measure the same spot on your arm, and this goes for your leg too. So you're going to find the thickest part of your thigh. I'm going to find my hip bone sticking out here, and I'm going to measure down from my hip bone to the thickest part. Let's pretend that that's 8 inches down. So I'm going to write down 8 inches for the measurement, and then I'm going to measure my width, and I'm going to go ahead and write down that as well. So I'm measuring my width of my thigh, and I'm also writing down how far from my hip bone it is, and you're doing that for your arm too. You can do other parts of your body. If you want to measure your chest, you'll go across the nipple line. If you want to measure your hips, you'll find your hip bones and go across your hips. The ones that I always ask for are going to be your thigh, your upper arm, and your waist, most importantly. So it's really up to you. If you're insecure about any areas and you know you want to see change in them, then you would measure those parts as well. All right, and so go ahead and head to the app and put in your measurements after you're done.